Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 A320 Guide. And guys, I am proud to announce that version 1 of the document is ready and available for download on my Patreon site. It will require a Patreon subscription of a minimum of $10 in order to download the doc. It's been quite a lot of work. It's only 40 pages at the moment, but it is a complete flight. It was many hours getting all the screenshots right and everything where it needed to be. It was quite the undertaking. Now there's going to be much more coming to this dock. At the moment it is extremely basic. It is a complete ILS flight from Tucson, Arizona up to Los Angeles International Airport, with an ILS approach to runway 25 right, departing from runway 11 left in Tucson. I am going to do a start to finish video today, where we will go through every step of the guide as it is written, and hopefully catch any weird things that may need to be changed and things like that. I will announce that in this video, and then changes will be made, obviously following. There is a link to the Patreon site in the description below. Please, guys, consider joining and subscribing. There's going to be many other documents and helpful tools that will be coming to the Patreon site in the near future. There's a 747 guide that is going to be started shortly. There is a mission editor guide that I've been working on for DCS World that's going to be released in the next, I would say, couple of weeks. Just a bunch of stuff that's coming for it. Obviously, the A320 guide, as it continues to change, will constantly get updates. It is written using the A32NX mod. There's a link for it in the description below. The mod offers significantly more functionality to the aircraft. It also has its own downloader and installer now, so it is very simple to keep up to date. You have the option to either install the development version or the stable release. I have been using the development version all along and have yet to run into anything that I would call a game breaker. There's a couple weird behaviors currently. I think the VNAV is a little, the logic needs a little bit of adjustment. Some of the descent rates are fairly extreme, based on what I've seen in previous simulators. Sometimes the descent rate goes all the way into areas of anywhere from 35 to 3,700 feet per minute, which seems a little crazy. Anyway, so I hope that you guys enjoy this video, and let's go ahead and get started with the guide. Also, please forgive me as I am still getting over this darn cold. The congestion is just hanging on and won't break free. So I will try to keep the sniffling, etc., and cold noises to a minimum, but if some of them sneak into the video, forgive me. I will not be displaying necessarily the guide on the screen, and most of that is just because a lot of it happens fairly quickly. I do have 3 monitors, so I keep them off the sides, and that way you guys can just see everything in action. Also, we will not be using ATC today, as I don't feel like dealing with some of the incredibly odd behavior that happens with ATC. But I will show you guys a couple of different setups. One that is also not necessarily in the guide yet, but will be in the next release of it, to make things a little bit easier when designating your direction of traffic in the sim. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start right out with SimBrief. I'll bring this over in just a second. So starting from SimBrief here, and again, I am following our guide. We're going to first create a, go to the dispatch system, go to dispatch here. We're going to create a new flight. The only difference between the guide and what we have here is I am going to be using American Airlines, as to not offend anybody who feels that Southwest doesn't belong there. Let's do 2312 as our flight number. Actually, we'll use 1233 just like we do in the guide. And we are departing from Tucson International, arriving at KLAX. Okay. Alternate is Ontario. Departure date obviously is going to be today. Departure time, that's fine. The airframe, we're going to be using the A320. Climb profile I leave as default. Cruise index, we're going to do a cruise index of 20 to match the guide. Make sure that doesn't change. Fuel factor we're going to leave as is. By the way, I finally got an answer of what this is for you guys who do not know. What fuel factor is if you find that, for example, you are using 5% less fuel than what SimBrief is assigning, you can set your fuel factor and it will reduce it or increase it based on where you're at. Okay. Registration, we can go ahead and keep that as is. We're not worried about that. FIN number's fine for today. Now let's see here. Passengers. What did we set our passengers? We have a full flight today. Cargo, according to the documentation, we're looking at 7.5. And you know what? There is actually something that I need to do. It's going to be 7.5 tons. And we need to make sure we come up here and change this to kilograms. There we go. 0 fuel weight. I believe we left at auto. We did indeed. Extra fuel. We're going to take 2 tons with us, basically. All right. And there we go. And that is basically it for setting up our flight. And we're J104, Messy, up to the Hollywood 1 arrival. All right, and arriving, we are going to select, runway 25 right for the arrival. That way we match our dock as well. And that is all we need, folks. So now we can just come up here to the top and hit Generate Operational Flight Plan, or OFP. All right, and we have our flight plan. Now, you can either leave it on this one here if you choose to use it in the browser. I find it easier to read by just going to the PDF preview here. And that way you can also zoom in and out with the browser as needed. So we are done with SimBrief, so we're going to go ahead and punch that guy out of there for a minute, and we're going to move this off screen here. All right. So now we need to set up our flight in the sim. So we're going to come to our world map. We're going to go on up and find our A320. First thing we're going to do is our weights and balances. Now, the guide does break it down, so I'm just going to sort of walk through it, but it does have it step by step. Let me show you guys real quick. I will show you that. Okay. So it walks through how to save everything, how to save your flight plan, everything we just did. It gives you some tips on if you don't know how to read the flight plan. There's a interactive training document that can be found on their website. Gives a link to that. And now we're going to go ahead and start setting up the flight. But it goes through the weights and balances and everything you need here. So don't sweat that. Okay? Literally everything I do on the screen here, guys, is in the document. Okay, minus this part here in just a minute. Did I put that in there? Hang on a second. Let me double check myself. That's a good question. Yeah, I did not. So the only thing that's different, and this will be in the next release, is you have an option here. So obviously we're going to select our departure. That's a requirement. Let's pick our gate. Doesn't matter which gate you pick. You can pick whichever one you'd like. All right. Now, this is the part I left out in the doc, because at the time that I started writing the documentation, I wasn't using the in-game airways and routing because it was crap. It has gotten a lot better. Now I also am using the Navigraph AirRack data updater. It's currently a beta version, but you can download it from Navigraph's website and get the latest AirRack data installed into Microsoft Flight Simulator. So we're going to go ahead and do KLAX. You can see we do have runway 25 right here. Now there's a couple things we can do here. We're going to be using the high altitude airways. And it actually will add everything in if you choose to do that. But I actually don't. So we're going to leave this as direct GPS. Okay. That way, but we still have our runway and then the departure runway. Like I said, we're not using ATC today, so we're not worried about it. But the guide will also show you an alternative where if you have the latest data, you can add in your flight plan or create your flight plan using the simulator without necessarily using SimBrief. All right, so now we need to set up our weights and balances. So let's go over here again, and we're going to set this over to pounds. And we're going to come on down to 33. We want these up at 54. Okay, and then we're going to take this guy over to 60%. And let me make sure. Oh, I hate it when it does that. There we go. All right, and as in the guide, we need to adjust our center of gravity. The center of gravity is terrible. Now, I did set this up a little goofy. I don't ask why I did that. So I changed the forward baggage, which was good. Okay, shifts the weight back. And then added more weight to the back to shift it back a little further. But instead of putting it in rear baggage, I put it in the economy class. So there's some really fat people in economy right now. I mean, I'm probably one of them. All right. And then all of these numbers match up exactly to the guide. 90,400 pounds, 15,705, and 4,836. All right, so we are exactly as the guide is. Take note of your MAC number. This will obviously be needed later for configuration in the flight. Okay, it's up to you. You can go over to ATC options if you choose ATC, and you can type in your call sign. So we have American Airlines and our flight number here. I already had that in from the previous flight, so that was auto-populated. Just click on our airplane here. I'm going to go ahead and go to flight conditions and kick the time back a little bit. We're not going to use live. We're going to use preset today. And we're going to bring that time back. Just to make sure that we don't have any concerns about landing in the dark. I don't want that to happen. I know I could adjust it in flight too, but you know, it's just as easy now. All right, so go back to the world map and let's get in the cockpit. And also in the document, guys, just so you have an understanding, it does also walk you through where to get your weights and balances, where to get your fuel from, where to get your cargo from the SimBrief flight plan. It literally walks through everything step by step. So I know I didn't show that in the doc today or in the video today, and that's just save time. The guide itself does show you how to see everything. All right, so anyway, like I said, I just wanted to make sure you guys are aware that even though I don't demonstrate necessarily everything in this video, it is in the guide very, very thoroughly. So I know that, you know, some of the questions, I didn't want the questions to pop up, well, where did you get your weight from? Where did you get your fuel from? The guide does break all that down step by step by step, highlights the locations of everything and where to find the info that you need. All right, so moving up, we're just going to follow the guide step by step here, and we've got battery 1 on, battery 2 on, external power on. We can do a fire test for the APU. Make sure pack flow is set to normal. Ventilation system, no faults. We can come on down to the ECAM page. And actually, first we'll get our lights up here. Got those lights there. Those lights there. This guy here if you choose. And obviously lights are totally at your discretion. Okay. And then we would come down here and we would have a recall. And what recall would do is if there were any errors from the previous flight, it would pop those up. In case anything wasn't maybe quite reported or put in the logbook, gives you that. Then we can go ahead and clear the TCAS fault. That's fine. TCAS isn't on yet. All right, and I'm going to come back over to our guide and scroll down a little bit. Once it becomes available, we would check the hydraulics page. We're going to go to our engine page, make sure the oil quantity is good. That's actually, from my understanding, a little high on the oil, but still within the parameters. Make sure we have accumulated pressure for the hydraulic and the brake system. Okay, so this is a brakes pressure gauge. Let's verify landing gear is down. Brakes, parking brake is on. And let's come back up top. Oops, if I'm clicked in there we go. So coming back up here to the top page. Next thing we want to do is turn on the crew oxygen supply. We would hit the ground control if it was available, not quite yet. Do a CVR test if available, not quite yet. Make sure that the evacuation order is set to the captain's location. Okay, this is actually what triggers the order to evacuate the aircraft should it be necessary. Hopefully everything goes well in your flight. You don't need that. And then now we'll go ahead and turn the ADIRs on, get our IRS alignment going. So we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Moving on down the overhead panel, we'll make sure the strobe light is set to auto. Beacon light can come on. And nav and logo light can come on. And then exterior wing lights if you choose. All right. And then let's see here, where are we at here? We would set our landing automation to auto. Ooh, this is the latest development of the A320neo mod, guys. This is new. This was not usually working before. But we would set this to auto, so we're good there. All right, and then we can bring up our fuel pumps as long as the refueling is complete. Now, we started the aircraft with the fuel that we assigned to it, so we should be good there. So we're just going to bring our fuel pumps on. We can do our APU fire test. You would set up radio 3 if you needed it and if it was available. Hopefully future development. And let me scroll on down here. Oops. Sorry, messed up my view here. All right, and then come on down to the forward panel. Make sure that our chronometer time is set to GPS. All right, and make sure the anti-skid nose wheel steering is on. We could set our radio frequencies if we needed to down here on radio 1 and 2. As I said, we're not going to be using ATC today, so I'm not too concerned with that at the moment. However, we will assume that we have contacted ATC and gotten clearance for our flight plan today and been given a squawk code. So we're going to go ahead and turn the transponder on and set our squawk code for 3256. So you can put whatever you'd like in here. Okay. Minus, I would stay away from most of the ones in the 7 series, as a lot of them have to do with emergency transponder codes. Now, this one you can do before takeoff, or you can do it now. It is totally up to you. I like to just do it now and be done with it. And that is, we're going to turn our constraints on. We can leave the rows to arc, but we want our altitude constraints to be shown. Set your ranges as you choose. For takeoff and taxi, I would recommend leaving the ranges relatively short until you start approaching your cruise altitudes. All right, next step. Let's go ahead and get on down to the MCDU. And just clear that out. Just letting us know the IRS is aligning. But we're going to go ahead and go to the initialization page and start entering some information. Now, again, all of this is step by step in the guide. It is all there for you. I have everything boxed to give you guys an idea real quick. So here's the initialization page. Now, it has changed a little bit in the latest update, the way it looks compared to the screenshot here. However, the information is the same. So you see alternate route, flight number, cost index, etc. So it's all still there. It just looks prettier over here now. Okay, but you guys can see that I put everything in step by step where to get what you need. Okay. So we're going to be looking at a alternate route of Ontario. I don't know why I said Ontario, but Ontario. Cruise index or cost index of 20. Cruise altitude is going to be 360. Now, we used to be able to put in the negative temperature, but in this case, we're just going to go 360 and hit enter. And that will auto-populate the temp. But if you wanted to make it to the flight plan, again, that is shown in the guide, you would have the ability to do that. But I think right now the negative is broken, so it would show as a positive temperature, which would not be correct at 36,000 feet. Okay. All right, so let's move on. Actually, no, shoot, we're not ready for that. Let me follow the guide, Mike. Let's go to our flight plan page now. All right, so you can see first we're departing from KTUS, so we're going to start there. We're going to select our departure, runway 11 left. We're going to use the burrow for departure and the Gila Bend transition. Give it a second to populate. There it goes, and insert. All right. Next things we're going to do is we're going to set up our first direct here. And so if I come down to our flight plan, we're going to go to the Gila Bend. So it says last from the Gila Bend. And we're going to jump on to the, J104 airway. And it doesn't always populate, that's fine. And we're going to be going to Massey. All right, yep. And just drop that in there. And it says direct, but it jumps on. It shows in the flight plan correctly. So if we scroll down to our flight plan, you can see there's the J104 under the Massey. Okay, and then we're going to be going direct to east wind. Now what we can do here is just start typing east wind. Let me check something real quick. Yep, okay, cool, I did. Now, you should be able, when you type in your direct, you should be able to type in the last location. I ran into bugs, whether this be the default or not, or the mod. You have two different ways to do this. You can either select the last waypoint, in our case, the destination, but we should be able to just simply do that, see if it works, and it did. And that's how it should function. And you can do this with anything that is a direct. Okay, and how we know it's direct, just so, give as much information as can, is this DCT. Anytime you see a DCT in your flight plan, that means direct. Okay, so we're not going to be using an airway or anything like that. We're just going straight to it. Okay, and then now we're ready to set up our arrival. Okay, so we have everything up until the arrival. Now we need to start looking at our arrival, which means we need to select our destination. And again, pretty black and white. We're just going to select the arrival. And we're expecting, in our case, guaranteeing, because we're not using ATC, we're going to come in for the ILS 25 right approach. Okay, and we are using a star, so we need to scroll up. Oh, there it is right there, the Hollywood 1. And we are using the transition to Sivu. Okay, and again, everything and where this information comes from is in the guide. And you can see ILS 25 right via Sivu onto the star, or from the star Hollywood 1 using the east wind transition. All right, so we just go insert. And the GPS primary lights up here. This is also new that will be added in the next release of the guide. Indicates that the alignment process is complete. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is verify our flight plan and that there aren't any weird behaviors in it or anything like that that we have to worry about. And when I say by weird behaviors, you're looking for discontinuities, and it'll actually say discontinuity. Any breaks in the flight plan, any really weird turns, backtracks, things that, aren't fabulous. Okay, and how we can check that. So we checked for discontinuities, but let's go up top. And we're going to change our rows mode to plan. And if you watch here, you can just cycle through your whole flight plan as you step through. And we're looking for any breaks, any gaps, like that one. That's really weird. So let's back that out a second. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So don't like what I did there. Oh, it's the arrival that did that. Okay, so in this case, what we can do is we can actually take messy out of there. And now, when we step through, we move on down. So that's one of those things that you guys want to look for. And that's actually a new development. I don't know if something changed in the flight plan in the latest data. I actually haven't seen that before. So that was actually kind of nice to catch. It had to do with the way the arrival caught that. Now, that could be because we entered everything in manually. Okay, because I know that when I add the flight route through the FMC, through the simulator, it doesn't do that. So either way, though, that's something that would be considered something that you would check this flight rows or the flight plan for and remove if possible. Okay, and then we're just stepping through, looking for Sivu. There's Sivu. So here's our transition onto the airfield or onto the approach. So we're going to downgrade that. So this is the transition from here to here. Lycum is our first waypoint in the approach to the runway. And everything from there will be straight down into Los Angeles International. All right, so flight plan complete. Let's go ahead and keep moving on down. Let's see what I've got for the next step here. Now we're going to take a look at the initialization B. So let's come on back down to, we're going to go to init B. And there's a couple different ways to do this. In the guide, I walk you guys through how to get your zero fuel weight from the guide. And so I'll show you guys that real quick here. Okay, broke it all down, how to calculate it, how to get everything that you need. Okay, so I want you guys to make sure you guys see that it's there before I just start typing in numbers, because I'm going to walk through this part pretty fast. Now, you can auto-populate it, if you see. So it's 59.5 at 25.6, but that's not right according to our flight plan and what we loaded onto the aircraft. Okay, that shouldn't be correct, okay? Unless, let me check one more thing. I might have to make an edit. So if we do pounds to kilograms and do 137,202, yeah, no, I didn't think so. Still not right. So I'm not sure where it gets its number from, but based on everything that we typed in, and even if we go by what's here, let me show you guys. That number doesn't make sense because I'm pretty sure that uses tons is what we're looking at. I haven't found anything to say that I'm wrong there. So our empty fuel weight is part of our zero fuel weight, obviously. So empty weight is 90,400 pounds. That's what the aircraft weighs with nothing on it. All right. And then we're going to do plus. We're not going to add the fuel. We want the zero fuel weight. So we're going to keep the fuel out of it. 40,836. And we get 131,236 versus the flight plan on SimBrief tells us 137,202. So it's only off by about 6,000 pounds. It's really not crazy when you think about the grand scheme. And when we do pounds to tons, and I do 131,236, I still get 65.6 versus 68.6 that we have in the dock. So for today, oops, what did I hit? I didn't want to hit that. Ah, cancel. Continue. Stop. There we go. Good. That was weird. What has happened there? Anyway. Everything's still as we set it, but it's like all the power reset. Like the external power was tripped. Batteries are still on. Alright, sorry about that. That was weird. Okay, let's go back down. Anyway, so what we're going to use today is we'll use from the guide. 68.6. And then we're going to do slash 25.6. This is that MAC number I told you guys to pay attention to. And that was already there. Block fuel. Okay, so again, I show the conversion in the guide. But we're going from kilograms to tons. And that should be 7.8. If I'm not mistaken. Let me use the guide. 7.1, excuse me. Let's clear that. 7.1. Got our block fuel. Something's weird here. We should have a takeoff weight. Give me a second, guys. Something's changed. That's changed. We lost all of our information. All right. Well, I'm going to whip through this real quick. So if you're in a situation like this, we are going from KTUS. I'm guaranteeing we're going to have to re-enter the flight plan. KLAX. Throw that in there. Nope, company. K Ontario 1233. See, now it's all back. That is so weird. All right, let's make sure the flight plan is good. Nope, it took the flight plan out. So doing departure 11 left, the Burrow 4, Gila Bend transition. Come on. Insert. Scroll down to the Gila Bend. Select that. Go to Airways. And actually, well, yeah, we'll just walk through the whole process again because I want you guys to see everything. J104. According to our flight plan, going to Messy. Okay, throw that guy in there. Ah, see, that's nice. It shouldn't. Last time we didn't do that. And then from there, we're going direct to East Wind, as we can put it here. So here's another way of doing this. And go insert. All right, and then from KLAX, we're going to the arrivals. We're going to find the ILS 25 right. Jumping on through the Hollywood 1. Using the CVU as a VIA. You can verify all the information up here again. Hit insert. Let's come back up top real quick. We can leave it in plan. And let's cycle through for a minute and see if we still have any of that bogus. See, that time it worked. You notice that? Look at that. We don't have any of that weird delete that we had to do last time. Okay, well, go Microsoft. I'm not quite sure who to blame for whatever just happened, but didn't do anything any differently. All right, but our flight plan is complete and looking good, so let's get back at it. So what we'll do here is actually go back to ARC, and we'll go ahead and set it for 20 for now. And let's come back in here. Let's go to the initial page again. Come back over to init B, and now we have our weights. This is exactly what I was expecting to see last time. So I'm not sure what happened. That was really weird. So we have our weight, we have our fuel weight, and now we have our takeoff weight of 75.5. Keep that one in mind. I'm going to go ahead and write that down for just a second here, because we're going to need that in a minute. All right, so now that the initial page is done, we can come over here and go to performance. Flaps, we're going to be using a flaps 1 takeoff. And then we need to get our transition altitude in. That's going to be 18,000 feet anytime we're flying in the U.S. Thrust reduction altitude is always 1,500 feet above the runway elevation. So that is golden. It's already pre-populated for us now in the latest version of the A320neo mod. If you are using the default aircraft, you will have to populate this manually. And again, the golden rule is 1,500 feet above runway altitude. All right, so now what we need to do is get our performance calculator out for the A320. And again, all links that are necessary are in the guide. All right, so we're going to be using the A320 aircraft. The engine is the CFM is the closest to what we're using. ICAO code of the departure airport is KTUS. We can go ahead and meter if you want. This will be actually live information. Notice the QNH is not in the inches that we use in the US, so you can just hit imperial and it'll tell you what the current altimeter is. I'm not doing that today because we're not using real weather, and this is not the step that's in the guide. Again, I'm trying to keep everything step by step. Okay. So flaps, we're going to be using 1 flaps for takeoff. Packs are on, anti-ice will be off, and runway is dry. Again, set these to, all 3 of these actually, for whatever your actual flight conditions are. All right, so our takeoff weight, we're going to be looking at, we need tons to kilograms. And actually, our flight plan will have that. So estimated takeoff weight is 69,124, so 69.1 is what it's expecting here. So 69.1, and just click on down. Select our runway of 11 left. Our Mach of 25.6, I almost forgot that. And it tells you what your trim setting should be, so 0.6 up on the trim for takeoff. And last thing we need to do is simply hit calculate. Now, you can use these V1s or V speeds if you choose. The aircraft will auto-calculate, and they're actually pretty close. But what we're interested in is this guy right here, the flex temp. Okay, so for our flex temp today, it is 64, and this is also the same in the guide. And then now we can calculate our V speeds. So there, just give them a double tap. All right, and so if we compare these real quick, you can see they're pretty close. 145, 150, and 151, 140, 147, 148. I would expect that because remember the engines are slightly different than what's actually on board this aircraft, so that's fine. Okay, nothing too crazy over there. All right, so we're done with the calculator. We can put that away. Now we're going to take our V2 speed here, and we're going to add 10 knots and throw it into the FCP. So 148 plus 10. So we're going to come up here. I hate it when it does that. There we go. All right, and let me keep moving with the guide. Make sure I'm on point here. Oh, this is when I should have turned the transponder on, and that makes sense because you don't want to request clearance until your flight plan is complete. So with the transponder, I got a little ahead of myself. But if you are requesting clearance, you'll enter your flight plan information first, then request your clearance, then you'll get your squawk code. So the guide does tell you the correct way to do it. I got ahead of myself here in the video. All right, so we've entered that in. So now, it's time for engine start and pushback. So the first thing we're going to do is come up top, and we're going to bring the master switch on for the APU, wait for the available light. If you come on down to the ECAM pages, once the APU is ready, we should see it switch to the APU page. Oh, helps when you hit the start button. Sorry. Thought I clicked it. So it's master switch on and the APU start on. And it still didn't switch. It should have. So we can come over here to the APU page. And we're just waiting. You can see the flaps open, but now we're waiting. There it goes. Now it comes to life. That's probably when it would have switched pages. That's when it actually started. So from this point here, we're just waiting for 100% on the APU to be able to use it. So that's going on. Again, we would verify strobe lights are on. Seatbelt sign. Let's go ahead and give it a throw. No smoking sign. It's typically used as a signal now for the cabin crew. Okay. Emergency exit lights will set to arm. Give the cabin crew a chime. Let them know we're going to be getting ready to roll here in a minute. Let's go ahead and lock and secure the cabin door. And if you have any jetways connected or anything like that, in this case oh, it is connected today. I didn't think it was. Shame on me. Like, wow, like seriously, I don't remember doing that. I don't remember it starting you with the jetway connected. But anyway, let's go ahead and go to tower. We're going to go to ground services. And typically we would just call the company, but that's all right. And do jetway disconnection. I'm going to move this off screen, but we'll leave it up because we're going to need it for the pushback command. And you can see the APU is now available. So we're going to come back up top and turn on the APU bleed. Auto brakes set to max. Trim wheel, 6 degrees up. Although I don't know if this is a requirement because I know the system's supposed to do it automatically. All right. And then now we will request our pushback once we do a quick flow. And all I'm doing here is just quick double check of my work here. Make sure everything's where it belongs. Set this back to the flight plan. Come up top. Again, just doing a flow. All blue, no white. All right, ready to go. So now let's get on to ATC here and tell them we're ready for a pushback. Let me get the camera out because I haven't even looked to see where we are here. Now when you request the pushback, you should get this nose wheel steering disengage. As soon as you see that, go ahead and kick the parking brake off. Let's go to our external camera here for a minute. It's just easier to use. And once the pushback is started, let's go ahead and get the engine started. First thing we're going to do is take our engine master mode, kick it over to ignition, and start rolling on engine 2. While engine 2 is powering up, we'll monitor the pushback. When pushing back, when looking at it from the nose, from this angle, if you want to go this way, it's you basically select whichever side of the aircraft you need it to turn. Okay, so in our case, we want to take off from over there, so we're going to select right here in a minute. You can see engine 2 starting there. And that dog barking sound there is an indication we can start engine 1. And we've stopped the pushback so we can secure the parking brake. Turn our flight directors on. I should have started the chronometers for each of the engine times, but I don't think it's critical for simulation purposes anyway. And we're just waiting for engine 2 here. We can go ahead and set our taxi light. It knows we like to taxi. Give the cabin crew another chime here. All right, and both engines are running and stable. Come up top. Disregard, following the guide. You get in such a habit, such a flow of doing things. So we're going to arm the spoilers for takeoff and select flaps 1. TCAS, traffic cautionary avoidance system, set it to on. You can turn our weather radar on now that we're not going to melt anybody's head with the radar, and the predictive wind shear can also turn to on, or auto in this case. Alright, and next thing, and I will have to edit the guide for this, but the APU bleed can now come off. And we can also turn off the APU. Although I believe that is done after takeoff, so I'll go ahead and leave that. That's why I left that there. A couple things that I still need confirmation on, but I mean, like I said, the guide works, which I'm happy about. Alright, and we can press our takeoff config. And you can see that it gives the says cabin check. All we need to do is come up here and give them another chat. And the captain says cabin crew seats for takeoff. All right, so parking brake can now be released. You can see cabin is ready, spoilers are armed, flaps and takeoff. Takeoff config is normal. Auto brake, parking brake set, our APU is available. We're watching our ground speed here. Taxi should be between about 15 and 20 knots. I wouldn't recommend turning her much over about 10 to 15. I typically use about 10 knots when turning it. Pretty big airplane to be driving like you're in NASCAR. A lot of people have asked in the past what head tracker I use. Right now I'm obviously not using it, but I use a TrackIR headset, but I use a program called OpenTrack. Just Google OpenTrack head track and you'll find it. To actually run the service, I just find it to be, the customization is much easier, much smoother, and it just seems to be much more user-friendly. Oh, apparently I have live traffic on. Good luck, buddy. Thank God for those invisible airplanes. Or invincible, I should say. Alright, so we're approaching 1-1 left here. So assuming we got the hold short command, we can hold short here. At this point, we'll kick our lights on here. Nose wheel light to take off. Runway turn off light on. Oh, and final one is I always set strobe to auto or to on when entering the runway. And thank you guys for the information, those who passed that along in the comments. So the strobe light, I know lights can be kind of a confusing subject, but something like the strobe light is always turned on right before you take the runway. And then obviously shut off when you exit it. All right. So we are now ready for takeoff. I'm just doing a quick check of our checklist here to make sure I'm right. One more thing we would have done probably before taking the runway is check your flight control surfaces. Oops, not the throttle. And you just move the stick around, move your rudders, verify everything's working correctly, and we're ready to get out of here. Let's go back to the engine performance. Oops. Alright, our altimeter is going to be 299.2 for today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to get rolling here. As we start moving, we're going to make sure that we push our stick about halfway forward, keep nose pressure down until we get to about 80 to 100 knots, then we can release it, and then look for our V-speeds and takeoff indicators. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and start the chronometer for our flight time. Set the engine power to 50%. Make sure we're stable. And you can see this little circle indicates where the physical throttle is. Okay, we're stable. Now we're just going to go ahead and move it into flex because we sent a flex temperature. It's a little weird trying to manage everything with a mouse. So passing through 100 knots there, I'm going to start releasing on the stick. You can see that -1, that's our V1. Purple is our rotate speed. Positive rate, gear up. That S indicates the point at which we will bring our flaps up. Want to be pulling up about 3 degrees a minute. Second. Excuse me, 3 degrees a second. It's really weird talking about all this stuff while you're doing it, so sorry for the stepping over my words there. I promise the doc is better than listening to me talk. Once we approach we're getting up on our thrust reduction altitude. There it is. So now we're going to pitch the nose down. Let the aircraft start accelerating for climb. And you can see lever climb. So we're going to come down here. Move our thrust levers into the climb position. And we can also engage the autopilot. Takeoff is complete. We can now disarm the spoilers. Set the engine operation to norm. I'm going to come up here and go on up click and get our speed into managed mode. And I'm going to go ahead and set our altitude to 18,000 feet for the transition. And you can see we're out of climb mode. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a quick tap. And now we get open climb. We can now disable the APU. Strobe light will set back to auto. Turn off light off. Nose light off. And we leave our landing lights on until we pass through 10,000 feet. And again, all of this is in the guide. Same thing with managing the autopilot, and how the controls work, and what indicators look for, whether it be up arrow, down arrow, etc. So passing through 10,000, we'll go ahead and kill the landing lights. You can see we're approaching our target speed. It's the climb speed. Once it reaches that speed, we start climbing back up again. Climbing pretty well here, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep on setting us out. So we're going to move it on up to 36,000 feet. And the reason why I'm going so high is that's what we have our flight plan set to, so I'm just going to keep going there. Now, as long as you adjust your altitude up while you are still in open climb, the aircraft will continue to climb. If for any reason this just says alt with a star, it means you've reached your target altitude, and you could have to put the arrow down here like this and tell the computer to keep climbing. Same thing with the descent. If it says open descent and you adjust it lower, you'll continue to descend down to your altitude. If it, again, when it says altitude in green there, you need to trigger it again and tell it to keep on descending. All right, we passed through 18,000 feet, so we can now change our pressure from barometric to standard with an up click. Oh, sorry, it's a down click. Up click to get it back. All right, so we're in standard now. You can see the standard down here. We're cruising out to flight level 360. We got a nice climb going. The aircraft's nice and smooth. Everything's good to go. Cabin crew's back there passing out peanuts by now. So at this point, guys, I will go ahead and give you a little bit of outside roll for a minute, and then we'll stop the video, and I will catch you guys as we start getting close to the descent. I'll see you guys soon. Couple things real quick, guys, that I wanted to show you. This little tail right here, oops, goodness, indicates the point at which you're going to reach your assigned altitude. Now, we were in open climb, and I should have caught this sooner. We actually didn't want to be in open climb at the time that we started the autopilot. We wanted to be in managed. These orange dots indicate that you're in managed mode. The speed is managed, the heading's managed. Okay, you can see the speed just switch over to Mach because we've gotten high enough. We want the altitude to be managed too, so we're going to do an up arrow, and you can see now we're just in climb mode. Thrust is climb, and the computer is in climb. Open climb, open descent, any of those indicates that you are controlling the descent rate or ascent rate or the altitude versus letting the computer do it. And the difference is that the computer should, if all is working right, follow the constraints. Okay, so down here, for those of you who don't know, these purple numbers indicate a constraint, whether it be above or below the assigned altitude there. Okay, so in our case, we needed to be above 9,000 feet by the Gila Bend. All right, so anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that real quick. I didn't catch that at takeoff. I just happened to be looking over here and saw that, and I knew earlier when we were doing the takeoff, when I said open climb, that I didn't like that. This will be another thing. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with what we were doing. You just have to make sure that you're managing your altitude and paying attention to the constraints if you want to follow that closely. Okay, but the guide, I believe, does say to use the open climb mode. Give me a second here. checking it right now. Nope, it says climb. So the guide does tell you to make sure that it says climb and not open climb, which, knock on wood, thank goodness. Wanted to make sure I was giving you guys correct information. But in this video, that was incorrect, so I'm kind of glad you guys saw that. Like I said, that's why I leave that kind of stuff in there. I don't edit it out. That's why I point out my mistakes when I make these videos, is I want you guys to be aware of all that. That way you know how to fix it. Like, you know, everyone makes mistakes. You know, I'm not ashamed of that. It is what it is. Nice thing about just being a simulator, right? But anyway, so we've approached our cruise altitude. We have a ways to go if we bring our range up here until our top of descent. And we can check that more thoroughly down by the flight plan here. So let's see here. We shouldn't even have been at the top of climb, and that's why we climbed so fast. That's the other part that was throwing me off. Is even without using ATC, that was a very fast climb. That's what made me start looking. But you can see here, now the flight plan only had us going, oh yes it did. There we go. So, oh no, it's 15,000 feet. Helps when I look at the right thing. So the flight plan only had us up at 32,000 feet, which according to the computer. And this should actually say we should have been below 42,000 if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check this. Oh, no, that's not. Disregard that. Gosh, I'm just talking up my butt right now, aren't I? Anyways, some of the stuff, like I said, still gets confusing for me too. That's why that's why I created the doc. But anyway, so our top of descent would be right about between Hollywood and Bruin. As you can see, we're up at 32,000. That's our peak altitude here. Actually, sorry, be before. The indexes here, I believe, indicate that we are at our cruise altitude. So at Hollywood, just before, is when our top of descent will start. So when we get closer to Monroe, I will restart the video here and show you guys how to easily set up for the descent. All right. Alright guys, welcome back. So we are getting close to our descent. It should be right around here. So there's a couple things I want to show you guys real quick first. So as long as you are in the managed mode, as soon as you see that your altitude's starting to change, so by Hollywood we should be down at 320 feet. All we need to do, okay, to have the aircraft do this automatically for us. By the way, there's some really weird things happening with the aircraft last couple minutes. I'm not quite sure what that's about. So if anything pops up, we'll just deal with it as it arises. Had a weird overspeed warning when we weren't oversped, and aircraft plummeted for a minute and came back up. It didn't drop hard, but you know, it just very dramatic and very instant. Like you can see, the altitude sort of fluctuated there. Just some weird things happening. So it's not normal. Just keep that in mind. Anyway, so we're in managed mode. So all we want to do now is start setting our target altitude down to the runway. So in our case, we're going to go ahead and just start with, say, 10,000 feet. Okay, and when we reach the time of descent, okay, basically at the point where the computer thinks that we need to start descending in order to hit our target altitude, as long as we do that, it will automatically start descending. Okay, so all we had to do was set our altitude, make sure that orange dot's up, you can see the engines are throttling back. It takes about 10 miles for the aircraft to slow down, although we are now approaching an overspeed. Interesting. Although we're starting to slow down finally. There we go. So it's about 10 miles before your top of descent. The aircraft will first slow down, and then it will start its descent down to altitude. Now the next thing that we need to do is start preparing for our approach. And in order to do that, we need to go into the approach mode. So we're going to go to performance. Now we don't want to activate the approach phase yet, but we do want to configure it. So we're just going to come over here to next phase and find approach. And here's where we're going to enter all the information for our runway. Now normally we would contact ATIS for Los Angeles International, and we can go ahead and try it, and I believe the frequencies are the same, but I'm going to pull up the KLX approach plate here, and you can see here we have the ILS frequency we should see. Here's the ATIS for the approaches, 133.8. So let's start there. Let's go ahead and tune our radio and see if we can't get it on board here. Go down to 6, I think. There it goes. And we're looking for, what was that? And come back up here, 133.8. So we're going to go scroll down and see if we can get it. We may be too far out still, but we'll try. Yeah, I think we're too far out. So we can't get the altimeter yet. We can't get the wind yet. I wish there was a way to just tune the radio I want when I want it. I don't like the radio system in this sim. I really don't. Anyway, so what we can do, though, is we can set our transition altitude. Always 18,000 feet in the U.S. The QNH, we're going to set for 299 or 2 right now. We can always change this on the fly, too. But what we're really interested in is the minimums and the decision height. And where we're going to find that is if we see the approach plate, you can see ILS 25 right. Okay. We're going to scroll down here, and it's this number right here. 200 feet is our decision height and approach height. So our minimums, we're just going to go 200. And I think decision height isn't really used anymore, but the minimums are, which is the MDA, but we'll put it into both. Okay. And then now we're just waiting on our temperature and magnetic heading for the wind and wind speed. Let's go back to our flight plan. And let's go back up top. Looks like we're going to be flying into some weather here. And we can also click our rad nav button, and you can see the ILS 25 right has already been put in for us, 111.1, and we saw that on the approach plate. And our descent has started. And this is something else that I've noticed. It's really, really dramatic. I don't know if that's a bug or performance. We'll see what it does. It's starting to settle down, so it should come down. See what it does to manage the flight level. Should steady out at 32,000 feet if it follows the flight plan here. Which it looks like we're going to blow right through. Yep. So I don't think the VNAV is working particularly well. So what we're going to do here is tell it to knock it off. So we'll stabilize at 30,000. And it's going to go blow right through that too. So I'm going to go ahead and force it with a left click. So these are some bugs and things that I have noticed. Oh, that's new that it's climbing back up to it. That's kind of nice. Actually, never mind. I guess that would make sense because I forced it again. So these are things that you're going to run into when flying. And if you run into things like that, like what I was not happy with was how quickly it descended. 5,000 feet per minute. Like, that's BS. So, like, that's an expedited descent rate right there. 5,000 feet per minute. Which we didn't tell it to do. So, what we'll do from here is manage the descent ourselves once we come through Hollywood. So we're going to be looking for 270 at Bruin, 215 at Avatar, or Aviator, whichever one it is. Aviator probably makes more sense. I don't think there are Avatar fans out there, but you know, what the heck. You know what we can do, what you can do to sort of cheat, especially if you're using live weather for the radio. Because, like I said, I mean, there's no way for me to select it ahead of time. If you file your ILS report and you're actually using ATC, it doesn't let you switch as you would expect. So it's just really not a good system. I don't like the in-game radio. I think it's dumb. Anyway, so what you can do, and I just thought about, is if you're using the live weather, you can bring up that A320 performance calculator, just as a real quick solution without having to dig through many other apps, is we can just come in here and put in KLAX and get the meter. Switch it to Imperial. Altimeter is 2983. Wind direction is 250. Speed 11 knots. So it even gives us our elevation. Looks like for the feet, it looks like 125 feet. But we'll grab that from the approach plate. But anyway, so 250 to 11 for 2983 on the altimeter. So what we can do here is come down here, go back to our performance page, go back and find the approach phase. And what did we just say the altimeter was? I already forgot it. 2983. 2983 for the altimeter. Temperature is 21. And headings, or wind is 250 at 11. 250 for... Oh, come on. I hate that. If you're not looking down far enough, you can't hit the button, even though you can see it. All right, and boom. And that's all configured. Okay, and we're going to be using a landing configuration of 3. So this is full flaps configuration, as you can see right here. Okay, here's our ILS speed, and here's our approach speed. We're looking for 165 knots, touchdown at 160, which that seems really fast. I'm not really buying that one. Okay, so I did forget to pay attention to our altitude, so we're going to look for aviator at 21,000 feet. So we're looking at for a descent now. So we're going to go descending. And pop her into open descent. Now, with using open descent, we're going to control our descent rate. So we're going to set it about 1,500 feet per minute. And it still, look at that, it dives. Like, no matter what I do, it's because it ignored me. There we go. So I was able to force it. So you put it back in manage mode and then just force the vertical speed is what I did there. Because otherwise it descends like a rock. And I just don't know why. Like 5,000 feet. I feel like that shouldn't be as quickly as possible. But like I didn't hit expedite, which is what this button should do. This button should force it to climb as quickly, or descend or climb as quickly as it possibly can. We'll increase it just a little bit though. Let's go 2,500 for a second. And some of this could be, you know, coding. The mod is still new. You know, there's still lots of things that are changing. If you guys are catching something that I'm doing wrong, just like I've put, you know, before, please tell me, because, like I said, there's no point in making a guide if I'm not giving correct information. All right, and we can see, let's see here, what are we looking down to now? At watt up, we're looking at 15,000 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and set that. And every time you change that, it's going to change this. So make sure you grab that back. And you can see your vertical speed is triggered here. So I don't know why it's descending so rapidly. If you guys have any tips on that, please let me know, because I'd like to add that to the guide and figure that one out. And now it did it again. It keeps forcing itself back into that, and I don't know why. Tell you what, let's put it back into manage mode. We'll do a little test. I'm wondering if it has to do with the constraints. So I'm going to see what happens. Because it's in descent mode now. Alright, so let's see what we got going on here. Sorry about that. I had a 5-year-old punch through the door. So what I'm trying to determine is if it's descending so fast because it's trying to get to that altitude before the waypoint passes. 'Cause that would make sense if it's following the restrictions. So I'm going to let it ride it out for a second. Honestly, I've always been freaked out by the descent rate, so I've really never given it the chance to see what it does. I've heard so many horror stories about the A320 plummeting into the ground. What am I set to here? Let's keep going. I'm set for 6,000 here. I'm going to turn the weather radar off so you guys can see everything there. Alright, so the purple indicates a restriction. It means that we're unable to fly that low. So I think that's what it is, guys. Okay, so follow the guide. It will walk you through correctly. That was me not paying attention. Staying in managed mode is perfectly fine. I had like a panic attack there, and there's our tail right there. You can see where we're projected to hit our assigned altitude. Alright, well, that makes me feel better. Oh, hey! We're receiving the telemetry from... Alright, now every time it does this, what you have to do, you see how it's bouncing like this? Just select a different field. And like, if we just do that, all of a sudden it starts working fine. So winds calm, visibility 3, sky conditions, few clouds. Alright, so we're going to change some things here, which is good because you guys get to see an edit. So ATC finally started talking to us. Or this is Los Angeles ATIS is what this is. 12,300 feet. Temperature is 17. You don't need the dew point. Altimeter 2985, so we were close there. That's good. Alright. So, a couple things we need to do right off the bat. We fell between 18,000 feet. Fell below 18,000 feet, so we need to switch back to barometric. Let's change that to 2985. Okay. And then go back to our performance page. Find the approach phase. And we're going to put 2985. Now they say winds are calm according to the sim, so we're going to go just 0, on the winds. And temperature was 17, so we'll drop that in there. All right, so that works out, but everything else is still good to go. Let it keep on descending. Now we are approaching 10,000 feet. So now it's time to start getting our aircraft ready for the landing in the approach mode. Now, the approach will happen, the approach mode will trigger automatically once you pass the decel point right here. We'll automatically switch into approach mode. So we don't have to activate it, but let's get our lights turned on. We need those on, taxi light. We're going to go ahead and chime the cabin, let them know. Strobe light back to on. And we're going to go ahead and set our altitude now down a little bit further to 3,000 feet. And what I like to do here set our approach mode up. We got our aircraft set up. We're set to 4. We can now, once we get to Lycum, I'm going to go ahead and once we turn towards the approach, it's about 25 nautical miles or so away from the approach. Okay, so if we switch this up to 40, you can see KLX. Okay, so at Lycum, we're about 25, about 30 miles out. So what we can do there is I'm going to go ahead and activate the LS mode. This is the ILS mode. Okay, now it's not, that's bad terminology, it's not a mode, it's just a tracking. Okay, it lets us know what it's looking for. Not going to worry about the localizers yet. We can, however, set our auto brake. We're going to use auto brake low. We're relatively light today, and we have a very long runway that we're landing on. We're going to arm our speed brakes. And from here, things are going to start moving pretty quick here. Well, the next few minutes here, I guess. Not quite yet. What we're going to be looking for is about 10 miles. Okay. So once we see KLX up here, so if we go down to 10, in this case, KLX will be right about here. Once KLX is at the 10-mile mark, we want to be seeing flaps 1. Between 8 miles and 7 or 8 miles, we want to see flaps 2. And then we can see flaps 1 right here, those 2 hash marks that are there. A little hard to see. Let me zoom in. Those hash marks indicate we are able to do so. Okay, that's when first stage of flaps can be deployed. We're not going to worry about it yet. We're a little far out still. But that's why I said that all this is going to happen really quickly. So 10 miles, flaps 1. Systems configured. Localizer set. Landing service set. ILS set, excuse me. At 7 to 8 miles, flaps 2, 5 to 6, we would expect flaps 3, gear down. And then at 4 miles, full flaps and locked in on the glide slope and ready for landing. Okay, so all this part, again, everything's in the guide step by step, but I'll be referencing the guide less and less as we move forward because there's a lot of information that could happen relatively fast. Okay, but we're actually looking pretty good, minus that hiccup in the descent, and that was my fault. Learn to trust the aircraft, Mike. Alright, so you can see we're at 3,000 here. Okay, but we're at an altitude restriction of above 7,000 here. Okay, let me pull that back. But once we pass that point, it'll continue to descend. Remember, purple always indicates there's a restriction keeping you from going that slow, or going that low. So from here, it's just a matter of managing our descent here. I'm going to set it back down to 10 nautical miles. Do another quick check of everything here. If we go to performance, you can see we're in the approach mode. It no longer says activate here because we passed the decel point, so it automatically went into the approach mode, so that's golden. We're going to be looking for, again, 165 on the approach, 160 at landing. And this is the point we're going to reach the 5,000 foot altitude. Just double check myself here. All right, Captain, let him know that we're getting ready to land here. I wish I could just find a default camera view that I liked. I just don't have any. Always messing with the camera. I'll try to figure that out one of these weekends here when I actually have some time to improve quality of life features here. I wonder why that's deactivated. Huh. Activate both those. And so we're just watching for KLAX now. You can see we're here, we're looking for 3,700 feet, so we're still under our limit. I'm going to go ahead and take this down to 1,000 feet. Whoa, that was a lag. That's nice. I will tell you guys, you learn something for, I would say, the first 50, 60 flights in one of these things. You learn something every time. Like, I have done this exact flight so many times now in preparation for this guide, and the videos that I've done, and, you know, just the studying and the practicing. Pausing, shutting up for a second. You can see here we've picked up the ILS frequency. We've also acquired the localizer, so what we can do is tap the localizer button, and you can see the green loc. Okay, that indicates that the localizer has been locked and acquired. If that was blue, it means the localizer system is looking for it but hasn't grabbed it yet. Green indicates we've grabbed it. So that's horizontal traffic, and that's why the aircraft just turned. So what this is doing is putting us on the center line for the runway. However, we do not have glide slope information yet. Okay, that won't come up until we get a bit closer here. Anyway, each time you fly these things, you learn more and more. All right, so now we've got the vertical indicators here, which this shows looks like we're actually a little bit below the glide slope. So I'm actually going to go ahead and activate the approach mode. And we're inside 10 miles just about, so I'm going to go ahead and go flaps 1. How can we be overspeeding? Oh, we are overspeeding. Disregard. Sorry. There. Now we're under. Let's try that again. So there's flaps 1. I'm going to go ahead and actually tell it to level off. I don't know why it's doing that. So what we're watching for now is this caret right here indicates the vertical glide slope. And you can see the glide slope is locked. Activate our speed, set it back to speed. I'm going to go ahead and roll it back to about 180 knots. You can see our target is selected. All right, we're about 7 miles out, so I'm going to go flaps 2. This F here indicates the flaps transition to full flaps mode, which that seems, again, really fast. I'm not sure I'm buying that yet, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to about 170 knots now. Actually, we're just about at the approach speed that it's telling us anyway. Alright, we're at 6 miles, so I'm going to go flaps 3, gear down. That sound is the gear coming down. We can see we're in an ILS. Glide slope has been acquired. We're in a Category 1 landing, meaning the pilot's going to land the aircraft, and runway 25 right is locked. Alright. See, that makes more sense. I'm going to go about 10 knots below what it's asking here. Go 155 knots, because that seems really fast. Alright, and we're at 4 miles. So I'm going full flaps here. Let's hope we break through this cloud cover soon. And when you're learning, I recommend at about 100 feet is when I disengage the autopilot. And we're just going to do a tap, tap, and land it. Okay, so turn off the autopilot, turn off auto throttle, bring her in. 30 feet, we flare, go to idle on the thrust. As soon as main wheels are down, engage the reverse thrusters, nose wheel comes down, push forward on the stick to apply further downforce. We've got that glide slope locked here. We can set our go-around altitude 2,000 feet. case we need to do a go around. And here we go. Talk about a foggy day. All right, disengaging. Floating. Whoa. Thrust reverses out. Auto brakes are already enabled. Passing through 70 knots, disengage the auto reverse thrust, excuse me. Start applying some wheel brake. And we'll make the first turn off here, or this next turn off, excuse me. Now, assuming you'd be sitting here waiting for taxi instruction, you might be told to hold short, or you just have a co-pilot with you, but in our case we don't. Now let's talk about cleaning up the aircraft. So the first thing I'm going to do is set my speeds down to 0 on the FCP. I'm going to go through this pretty quick. Altitudes down to low. Disengage the auto throttle, disengage the localizer, the LS modes, ILS. Okay, we're going to come down and make sure the spoilers are disarmed. Bring the flaps up. Come up top. Landing or nose wheel light to taxi if it wasn't already. Landing lights off. Strobe light off as we leave the runway. All right, and then everything else is pretty square. Not too much to it, just a lot in a quick couple seconds. And let's go taxi to a gate. Again, normally ATC would give you a gate, but we're not worried about that today. Oh, one more thing. Gosh darn it, sorry. We also need to start the APU. We'll just bring her right over here. Now, if you're not using ATC, you won't have a ground crew, a marshaller. But what you can do is come out to your window. Unless he appears way later. Nope, he didn't appear. Okay. So we're going to be going right about this line right here. Right about there. Okay. So we'll go back into the cockpit. Set the parking brake. APU should be available. It is. We'll go to APU bleed. Turn the nose wheel light off so we're not blinding everyone's face. And engine 1, engine 2 off. Once ground power is available, and actually, hold on a second. Finish doing here. We would also turn our weather radar off if we haven't already. We would have done that when exiting the runway. Same thing with the predicted wind shear. I just had to remember that we already didn't think to talk about it. TCAS can go to standby. Transponder can be turned off. come back up here. Taxi lights off, parking brake is set, engine 1 off, engine 2 off. As soon as external power is available, you can see it's already on. Shouldn't have activated automatically, but so once external power is available, we can simply disengage the APU bleed, shut the APU down. Okay, seatbelt signs, oops, removed. Time the cabin. Okay, and then finally, the last thing that we would do is stop the chronometer. Now, this is the configuration you would want to leave it in if you were doing a turnaround, okay? And you can see the MCDUs back at the main page. So if someone else was about to grab it or you were about to depart to another flight here, momentarily, you would leave it like this, okay? And that way you're ready for the next configuration. If you want full cold and dark, okay, then we go back up top. Oops, helps if I'm on the right screen. There we go. And turn everything off. So lights off, emergency exit lights off, crew supply off. Just double checking all of our lights. Fuel pumps, and these would actually, you would turn your fuel pumps off after you shut the APU off. Obviously don't want to be sitting there pumping fuel into something that isn't burning. Alright, so fuel pumps off would be the last step. Fuel pumps, then APU is off. And again, this is correct in my guide. Fuel pumps, then the APU off. Or actually, excuse me, APU, then the fuel pumps off. Gosh, I can't talk. And then that's where you would hold it for a turnaround. If you're going full cold and dark, keep going with the process. Turn all your lights off. Turn your emergency exit light, crew supply off. And then finally, batteries and external power. And that is all I've got for you guys for this version of the guide. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Obviously, before you turn your batteries off, call your jetway, all that good stuff. But I hope you guys are enjoying this. Please give me your feedback. Please consider subscribing to the Patreon site. Really love to have you on board. There's going to be a lot more information to come. I'm really trying to build a community where we're really sharing information. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care, folks.